think the key word that you used there was good businesses, right? I am not going to help a bad business. And in fact, it's a character flaw of my own that I don't suffer fools. So, when we see somebody in our industry who is in need, and we know that what has happened to them is out of their control, it's something that could happen to us. We treat people like humans. I can promise you that there is a few people in this town that if their roaster broke, I wouldn't be offering to help them out. But that's because I consider them bad businesses where they're not actually helping us.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop, It's Time to Become a Coffee Consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details.
Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 4 of a 5-part series. And in this series, we're talking with Matt Toogood from Raw Coffee in Dubai about the coffee crisis that we're experiencing in the coffee industry. If you are still unconvinced that there is a coffee crisis going on, please go on and watch previous episodes of pretty much any series on this podcast this year. And if you would like to support the podcast, please share this podcast with everybody and check out our Patreon as well as become a paid member of our YouTube channel. Now, in the last episode, we talked about navigating this crisis from within your business. We talked about how it was important to really understand who your customer is, whether it's your B2C customer or your B2B customer. We talked about why it was important to kind of make sure that you and your team are aligned. But the other way that we need to start considering navigating this crisis is on an external basis. So how are we managing relationships with suppliers? How are we managing relationships with, let's say, the city that comes and, gives us our permits? How are we navigating the relationships with perhaps local press? How are we navigating those kinds of things during a time of crisis so that we can keep control of the messaging, we can keep control of the flow of money, we can keep control of how hot the crisis is getting and its proximity to our business? And you guys know that I do a lot of business coaching and I'm a business advisor or consultant in the coffee industry. And something that we're working on quite significantly at the moment with clients is starting to get an understanding of how ready are we for the crisis and how will we know when the crisis is over fast? How will we know how the proximity of this crisis is impacting other businesses in our local industry and the global industry? So that's what we mean by trying to understand how to navigate this crisis externally. So Matt, you're somebody who, as we've mentioned in this series, Raw is kind of the grandmother of all specialty coffee in the Middle East. But whether it's in the Middle East or whether it's globally, there is a situation where external factors in all of the origin countries that you buy coffee from are going to have an impact on how you experience this crisis and the external factors to your business. What are some of your thoughts about how you're navigating that in Raw?
It's not sexy at all, but the very first thing comes down to cash. How much working capital you've got. When you say suppliers, you're talking directly about farmers and producers and things, but, we can't, I need bags to put my coffee in. I need cups to serve my coffee in. I need machines to sell to my customers in order to make it work. At the moment in the Middle East, we've got a 3-month shipping delay. So normally what takes us less than a month to bring a product from Europe is taking up to 3 months at the moment. Now, knowing how critical that is to your business is making sure you ask the what if questions. What if I don't receive that? What is my backup? What am I going to do? What if I don't sell what I sold last year? What am I going to do with the remaining green bean? How long can I keep that green bean before it's no longer in a condition that I can sell it as a specialty product? And then it again comes back down to the communication. The worst thing that I could think of to do to any one of our suppliers is not meet their expectations. So if I've purchased a container of coffee from a supplier the year before, do they expect me to purchase the same amount? Do they expect me to grow? If I'm not communicating with them all the time saying, listen, we think that we're actually not going to need quite as much, or we're going to need more. If I'm not doing that, not only am I going to lose their attention, which is a problem, as we go through things like, the unavailability of coffee at the quality that we want to buy it for, do you think that the supplier who you talk to once a year when you need something is waiting for your call, or is it the person that you talk to once a month and just find out how they're going? I think that the humanity side of everything we're doing is more important than anything at the moment. Actually being a human and understanding that your person that is supplying you is another human and they have the same wants, needs, and desires as you. That's critical, but it works. It really does work. I'm not going to let too many secrets out, but people who have finance roles within my business, my expectation is that they know the finance people at the other end of my customer as best friends, right? We get more information from those channels about what's happening than we do often directly. So again, relationships are going to be critical. But I do not do budgets. I hate budgets. I think that they're a waste of time and they're about as useful as the moment that you finish writing them, they're out of date. But I do forecasts. I do look at how much do I need in order to be successful? How much do I need to stay alive? So, and I have those systems in place that give us warnings to tell us if we're not on those tracks before it's too late.
How do you, with a recent situation whereby you guys helped out a local competitor and they got in a little bit of a challenging situation because their equipment broke down and they needed a hand, and Raw jumped in without a question and helped them out by roasting their coffee for them. And to me, this was a perfect demonstration of two businesses that are working their asses off to stay viable in a market that is very, very challenging, and not that there could have been an opportunity where you just let them say, you can sink and that's not our problem. But that's not what a values-driven business does. And it doesn't benefit a company like Raw to see other good businesses in the market be destroyed when they are businesses that should be surviving, right? So can you tell me a little bit about how your engagement with your so-called competitors is, how you navigate the way that you view them in the market going through a crisis like this?
I think the key word that you used there was good businesses, right? I am not going to help a bad business. And in fact, it's a character flaw of my own that I don't suffer fools. So, when we see somebody in our industry who is in need, and we know that what has happened to them is out of their control, it's something that could happen to us, we treat people like humans. I can promise you that there is a few people in this town that if their roaster broke, I wouldn't be offering to help them out. But that's because I consider them bad businesses where they're not actually helping us. If we do our jobs really well, people are going to drink 4 cups of coffee a day. If we do our jobs really badly, they're going to drink a Coke. So, the importance of having competitors in the market is so great, because I can't be there to sell every single cup of coffee, and we have to do it. And I saw something crazy the other day that, it was like if you put a vending machine with one brand of product sitting in the middle of a university campus, and it sells 100 units a day of whatever it's selling. If you put a competitive product next to it, you'll actually end up selling 200 of the competitive product and 200 of the original product, because it creates this mindset of people that, if there's this many vending machines, I should be getting something because I'm missing out. FOMO thing. It's exactly the same. Starbucks has taught us a huge amount in our industry. Why did they open stores kitty corner from each other at intersections? Because they knew that 2 places would actually not cannibalize each other. It would actually just mean that everyone walking past said, I must need a coffee. So we know that we need stores. What we've got to be careful with is that we're offering an increased value for the consumer. So when the consumer buys your product, they're getting value. Now, is it about just buying a very expensive coffee? No, because you roast a coffee badly and it's going to taste bad. You make a coffee badly, it's going to taste bad. So we're in an unfortunate industry where you can't crack the cap on our product. Well, maybe our cold brew. But we're an industry where we're reliant on actually doing our job correctly every time to make the coffee, and so it tastes as it should taste. But you have to look at, is your customer benefiting from what you're doing every single time you're coming in? Because if you're not doing as good a job as you could, maybe your competitor deserves some of their money because they're doing a better job, and that will spur you on to do a better job, and so the whole economy becomes better. The industry it's an interesting industry. Our industry, I started when I first got into it. I mean, we were the only specialty roaster in the Middle East when we opened. So, for us, having what we were doing, we were judging ourselves. Our customers were certainly saying that they liked it, but we were judging ourselves. Then we started going, and my very first specialty cup of coffee was after I started working with Raw, because I have to admit that what we were doing, 17, 15 years ago when I joined, was not really what I would consider specialty today. We're doing a pretty good job, but yeah, it was not where we needed to be. And I had a cup of coffee. I can't remember if it was James Hoffman or Tim Williams who actually served it to me in their tiny little shop. And I remember looking at this and going, this is a fantastic cup of coffee. I'm completely blown away. I've never tasted jasmine in a cup of coffee before. I'm mind blown. And then I looked at it and went, Kim and I have sat here for an hour. We've paid, I think it was £25 for 2 cups of coffee. And I looked around and there was only 2 seats in this place. And I went, how do you make any money doing this? And James looked at me and says, we're not doing it to make money. And I said, well, that's lucky, because you're not going to do it. So, we're creating experiences for people, but they're not sustainable from a business perspective.
And that's the problem, right? We have a legacy of specialty coffee where we were inspired by people who were telling us that specialty coffee is, and we still hear it, people who are running these amazing in inverted commas businesses come on this podcast and say, but everybody knows there's no money in specialty coffee. Why the fuck are we still running these businesses that we know, and we're advocating for people saying there's no money in specialty coffee? We clearly know that there's something that's broken. And what I am confident about is that we have two ways of navigating this moment from here on. Either this ends up with our industry looking very, very different, or this industry ends up repeating the same cycles. But wherever we end up after what's coming is a crisis, because we have too much energy, let's say, in the system. There's too much saturation, there's too much debt, there's not enough supply, there's too much demand, there's a lot of pressure on the consumer. All of these forces are external to the business as well as internal to the business. And there's a lot of businesses that are not going to be able to take the pressures of those things. And in my mind, a lot of this stemmed from 20 years ago when specialty coffee started becoming a thing. We didn't set the expectation at the time that a part of the specialty coffee model was that it had to be a viable business model that operated at 15% net profit.
Yeah, but I don't think that specialty coffee was ever that. You think about the pioneers of specialty coffee, the people who got into it to start off with. They were not doing it for the money.
And that's my point.
For the lifestyle.
That's my point. It should have been a part of, we should have found a way to make it a part of the model. Because what happened was they decided that specialty coffee was all about coffee competitions and stylists and publicists and all this shit. But we missed the part of it that encouraged people to be about viable businesses. And now we're paying the debt for doing that.
But the big boys didn't miss that. The big coffee
boys?
Companies, the big boys, the Nestle's of the world, the Starbucks of the world, the Costas of the world, they didn't miss that at all. They look back and think about it in a way that, at some point in a boardroom, somebody at Starbucks or a Nestle or a Costa or something looked around and went, whoa, these specialty coffee guys are taking some business. The people are really keen on that. So what do? They adopt our language immediately. So the consumer's going, okay, well, I'll just go back to where I was going, because they've taken our language. They created the environments. So they created the environments that people felt was the same. And then they said to the consumer, don't worry, if you don't really like that bitterness in the coffee, just put some sugar in it, just put some milk in it. It'll be fine. But look, we're the same, we're fair trade, we're doing this. So they were sitting there. They knew that they could do it. Listen, I think that my prices in my cafe here are about the same as the big chain coffee brands. We may be a little bit more per cup, but not relative to what we're paying 3-4 times the cost on the coffee, for sure. So, the consumer now, what I think is the big thing that's coming along is the consumer is still going to go to a place to eat and drink, but they won't drink coffee, because we will have dumbed down coffee to the point where, unless it's been added to something else, you won't consume it because it won't taste it. And, or it'll be a substituted product. Like at the moment, we're seeing matcha. Matcha is the thing that everyone wants to drink at the moment. You think about it in the UK, specialty coffee shops replace tea drinking. If you were a Sri Lankan farmer, I'm pretty sure that you don't like specialty coffee. because, you lost a huge amount of your business. But so what did they do? They did exactly the same as what the coffee industry is doing by making it a product that was sugar added, flavor added into iced tea. And, it's probably what we're going to do with coffee.
I definitely think that the next step is that the consumer is going to determine what the next phase or how this crisis accelerates based on a lot of the signaling that the consumer is giving through their spending habits. How are they going to engage with coffee? We know that coffee is a staple part of most people's day, most adults' day in most cultures. Are they going to shift to consuming at home at a more rapid rate than what they're already doing? Are they going to return to the cafe? Who knows? And at what rate that's going to happen? But I definitely think that that's going to be the final part of this that's going to shift us into actual crisis. So I'm not saying that we are not in crisis. I'm saying that we are not in a hot crisis. And I know that sounds like now we're getting facetious. But what I mean is that right now in places like Australia, it's a hot crisis. Right now in Australia, there is a lot of businesses that are going out of business. It's being spoken about in the press. Everybody knows that it's happening. And everybody's using the phrases crisis. That's not what's happening in America. In America, they're not talking like that. Here in the Middle East, they're not talking like that. In Europe, they're not talking about that. However, on the back end of everything, I'm getting phone calls and getting emails and getting DMs of people saying it's terrible. Businesses are closing left, right, and center, or roasters have got so much supply of green coffee, they have no idea what to do with it. We have so much coffee sitting in warehouses around the world and people don't know what the fuck to do with it, but they don't want to admit that they don't know how to get rid of it. So this is the kind of stuff that is the precursor to those economies going into a hot crisis. So what that leads us to is us needing to have to figure out how do we help businesses close with dignity. And that's what the final episode of this series is going to be about. So join us for that in the next episode, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.